Four teenagers vanished from a burger joint on a quiet Friday night. 2 days later, their bodies were found, murdered, dumped in the woods. No suspects, no justice. And the worst part? The police might have helped the killer get away. Stay with me. Because what you're about to hear will change the way you trust authority forever. You ever clocked out of work, thinking you'd head home, eat leftovers, and maybe catch a late movie on TV? That's all they planned to do. But instead, they vanished. 4 teens, one small-town burger joint, and a crime scene so mishandled it almost seemed like someone wanted the truth buried. For over 4 decades, this story has haunted Indiana, and not just because of what happened, but because of what didn't. Justice. We're told America is the land of law and order. But what happens when the law gets it wrong? When officers clean a crime scene before realizing it was a crime scene? When 4 bodies show up in the woods, and no one can explain how, why, or who did it. Welcome to the Burger Chef murders, a case that redefined failure, sparked fear in every late-shift worker, and became one of the most bone-chilling unsolved mysteries you've probably never heard of. If you think fast food is dangerous because of cholesterol, think again. In 1978, a $580 robbery turned into something way more sinister. 4 teenagers killed, 0 suspects arrested. And the real kicker? It could have all been prevented. This isn't just another story about forgotten victims. This is a wake-up call. Because behind every cold cases headline, there's a system that might have let it happen. So today, we're opening the file again. Not because we think we'll solve it, but because these kids deserve to be remembered. And maybe, just maybe, you'll notice something that investigators missed. Something hidden in plain sight. Something that could finally crack one of Indiana's darkest unexplained mysteries. Around 11 p.m., just as the Burger Chef in Speedway, Indiana, was winding down. For the night, 4 employees were still inside, wrapping up their shifts. Jane Freet, the 20-year-old assistant manager, was likely counting the till, while Ruth Shelton, Daniel Davis, and Mark Flemons, just teenagers, cleaned the fryers and wiped down the counters. It was the kind of night you'd expect to be uneventful. But in the world of cold cases, it's always in these ordinary moments that the unthinkable creeps in. The lights were on, the door was unlocked, and someone was watching. Now, imagine you're driving by your local burger joint. Late at night, everything seems normal, until you spot unfamiliar faces loitering near the back entrance. That's exactly what a customer witnessed around 11 p.m. People who didn't look like employees inside or hanging around the restaurant. It's the kind of observation that makes your gut twist, but it's subtle enough to ignore. And that's the danger. Because when it comes to unsolved mysteries, evil doesn't announce itself. It waits. There's something eerie about fast food restaurants late at night. The harsh fluorescent lights, the silence between fryer beeps, the hum of the soda machine. Places that feel safe by day suddenly become backdrops for real-life horror. And that Friday night, those 4 young lives were about to cross paths with something far darker than overtime. They weren't just closing up, they were being watched. It's a chilling reminder that behind every unexplained mysteries headline, there's a human routine interrupted. And here's the kicker. When we hear stories like this, we always think, that could never happen to me. But it's exactly that belief that leaves so many cases open-ended. What if that passerby had trusted their instincts and called someone? What if one of the teens had felt that tingle in their spine and locked the doors early? It's in these tiny moments that fate shifts. And just hours later, as the clock struck midnight, those moments would come back to haunt a town forever. Just after midnight, a young employee named Brian Crane showed up at the Burger Chef, expecting to help. Out like he'd done before. But something felt off. The back door was ajar, wide enough to feel wrong, but not wide enough to scream panic. Stepping inside, he saw the place looked like it had been deserted in a hurry. The register drawers were yanked open. The safe had been emptied of exactly $581. Yet here's the unsettling part. No broken glass, no signs of struggle, just absence, pure, eerie silence. Now here's where things get messier than a dropped milkshake. Investigators made a judgment call, and a bad one. They assumed the crew had taken the cash and bolted for a joyride, maybe to dodge responsibilities or pull some teen prank. So what did they do? They cleaned up the place, literally. They wiped down countertops, mopped the floors, and reopened the restaurant like nothing happened. And with that, any chance of collecting solid forensic evidence, fingerprints, shoe prints, anything, vanished. Another tragic misstep in the long timeline of cold cases. What made that initial theory so bizarre was that none of the kids took their stuff. Jane and Ruth's purses were still there, coats hung on chairs. Think about it. Would you run away with your friends in the middle of the night during November in Indiana and leave behind your car keys, wallet, and coat? Not likely. That's the kind of red flag that should have shifted the case from runaways to probable abduction instantly. But in this world of unsolved mysteries, timing is everything, and they were already behind. By morning, Jane's car was found ditched somewhere else in town, like a ghost vehicle dropped to mislead. Still, no panic, no urgency, and that's what stings. Families began calling the station, worried their kids hadn't come home. Co-workers were puzzled, but the investigation lagged behind, buried under false assumptions. And while the sun rose, over Speedway, the truth was already being buried, 20 miles away. The next day would bring revelations no one was prepared for, thrusting this case into the hall of America's most haunting, unexplained mysteries. It was a crisp Sunday morning when two hikers stumbled upon a sight no one should ever have to see. 4 bodies lying in the underbrush of rural Johnson County, Indiana, just 20 miles from the Burger Chef where they were last seen alive. The teens were still in their uniforms, like they'd clocked out but never left the job. For investigators, this was no longer a missing persons case. It had become a full-blown homicide. A brutal twist in a story that had already veered into cold cases territory within hours. Each victim had met a different fate. Daniel Davis and Ruth Shelton were both shot execution style. Jane Freet had been stabbed in the chest, so violently the knife broke off in her body. And Mark Flemons, he had been bludgeoned with a chain, dying likely from choking on his own blood. The brutality wasn't just senseless, it was chaotic, as if driven by panic, fear, or something even darker. In cases like these, patterns matter. But here, the killer's methods were all over the place. That's what pushes it deeper into the realm of unsolved mysteries. The more you look into it, the clearer it becomes. This wasn't a clean, professional job. It felt rushed, disorganized, and yet, whoever did this vanished without a trace. No murder weapon, no fingerprints, no witnesses. Just 4 lives ended in a wooded area no one was supposed to find. It's this combination of horror and silence that defines so many of America's unexplained mysteries. And that silence? It's what makes the family's grief even harder to carry. Not knowing why is sometimes worse than knowing how. But here's the thing. When cases like this remain open, they don't just haunt the families. They haunt entire towns. They become cautionary tales, ghost stories told in whispers, each version more desperate than the last. And this one? It stuck. It changed how Indiana saw itself. From that day forward, no teenager working a late shift ever looked at the back door the same way again. Yet even decades later, the question remains: who did it, and why? The truth is, these 4 teens didn't die because of bad luck. They died because a system failed them. And that same system still fails others today. So let me ask you this. How many more cold cases need to pile up before we start holding people accountable? How many more families have to live with silence instead of justice? If this story made you feel something, anger, sadness, disbelief, that's a good thing. It means you care. And caring is the first step toward change. Maybe you've worked a late shift. Maybe your kids do. Think about that the next time someone brushes off an unsolved case as ancient history. These aren't just stories. These are warnings. And they remind us that real monsters don't wear masks. They walk among us, unnoticed, undisturbed. That's why we tell these stories. To remember, to ask better questions, to keep pressing for answers to these unsolved mysteries. Because the deeper you dive into these unexplained mysteries, the more you realize justice doesn't just happen, it has to be demanded. And the people who demand it? They're not just detectives or journalists. They're folks like you, curious, alert, unwilling to look away. So keep asking questions, stay sharp, and don't let the silence win. If this story made you think twice about the world around you, then stick with us. Subscribe to the channel, turn on those notifications, and join a community that refuses to let the truth stay buried. We're just getting started.